Again, Caleb, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Allan. It really is an honor. My name's Caleb, and I am a creative artist and indie VFX artist. I've been helping artists for the majority of my career through online tutorials and written content, and really spent my time empowering artists to succeed in their craft. And so I've worked with companies like School of Motion and Rebel Way that create online training, and written for a lot of blogs that talk about, filmmaking, video production, VFX, things like that. And so I've spent the majority of my career helping artists kind of in the traditional sense of the VFX and filmmaking pipeline. But now with these AI tools, I'm really trying to pioneer and explore their potential use cases in a film production context. So that brings us to today.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I kind of just want to dive right into all things AI. So, I mean, I was curious for you, like, when did you first get involved in AI, or when was the spark of like, hey, this looks cool? Like, what's this all about?
I love this conversation because it's crazy to me that ChatGPT didn't come out until last November. Like, it's only been out for like less than a year, but like these AI tools have like dramatically changed things for everyone. When ChatGPT first came out, I started messing around with it, but it was pretty bad at that point. Like, it was fun as like a little tool to throw in there and have it like talk about the Declaration of Independence in the style of a pirate or something like that. But it wasn't like there wasn't anything that was like super I guess tactical for my work at that point. But obviously just with the iterations of ChatGPT over time, it became increasingly interesting for my work, which was mainly doing like marketing and writing and things like that. But in addition to that, tools like Dolly and Midjourney, they came out at the end of last year as well, and then have iterated. And it wasn't until Midjourney 4 that I really started feeling like there might be like some sort of narrative potential in like a cinematography or filmmaking context for AI tools. And so in early May, I was like, you know what, like there's all these tools like DID, Midjourney, ChatGPT. What if we like combined all these things together and put together a movie trailer? And so I put together a Star Wars concept as directed by Wes Anderson, really just like for fun in my free time. Like, to be fully honest, I was feeling a little burnt out in my work, and I just needed like some sort of creative outlet to just test out all these new tools. And so I put together that project, and I made it a point. I was like, I want to use as much AI as possible, because I just want to see like what the creative limit is on these tools. So I like used ChatGPT to write the script and even come up with the idea. Like, I was like, I'm not going to come up with the idea. I want AI to come up with the idea. So it made the idea, did the script, put together a shot list for me. Then I went over to Midjourney, pulled the images, and used like tools like DID and 11 Labs to like animate the faces, do the voices, and then threw it all together in Premiere with a little bit of After Effects. And I put it out online, and it, like, I went to bed, it had like 200 views. And I was like, 200 views, that's awesome. And I woke up the next day, it was a Saturday morning, and it had like over 500,000 views.
Wow.
And like was going viral. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Later in the day, some news organizations started picking it up. And the next day I was just playing Mario Kart with my friends, and I looked down at my phone, and the Hollywood Reporter had written about it. And by that point, it then got picked up in like every major publication. And so it was a really strange weekend.
What did you get up to on the weekend? Well, I just became a YouTube celebrity. Like a chat with people and a lot of guys who are just instantly, like, overnight. It's just like, okay, like Beeple's a good example where nerdiest, coolest, funniest guy, but like seeing him win the GQ Artist of the Year award is just like, that's hilarious on itself. For you, like, what was the experience like putting that out there and just kind of seeing like, okay, like now people everywhere in the world seem to know what the hell this is, and what do I do now? So
yeah, that was really interesting, because I think my initial thought was like, okay, there's probably going to be very few opportunities in your life where you have like everyone talking about the work that you're doing. So like, what do I need to do to like just make the most of this? The first thing was just being willing to like do the interviews, talk to people about the process. I really feel like these AI tools can really help to empower creatives rather than just, all the scary stuff like take our jobs and, make us unemployed. And so I really wanted to make sure that that more optimistic narrative was getting out there, because it was very easy for news publications to see my work and then immediately, oh, this is the end of Hollywood. Like, you know what I mean? All these sensationalized headlines. And so I really tried to use that platform to try to empower artists and give them a sense of stability in all of this AI conversation. But so many people, I put that out there, were like, how did you do this? Please teach me how you put together this AI project. And so I was like, okay, I had a background because at the time I was working at Rebelway, and they do online boot camps for Houdini, Nuke, Unreal Engine, and things like that. And so I was like, what if I put together a boot camp that teaches people this new AI pipeline? And so I just put up a quick landing page, and we had tons of artists sign up for the wait list. And then we ended up putting it on sale, and it sold out in less than 24 hours. And I was like, okay, well, this definitely could be something. And so we very quickly transitioned Curious Refuge, which up to that point had been just kind of a place that we put side projects and fun, productivity tutorials. I did After Effects tutorials back in the day. And I was like, what if we make the first online home for AI filmmakers? And so we put together a gallery on Curious Refuge, a Discord, and we're running boot camps now. We're on our second cohort that ran in July, and people are loving it. We really feel like we're kind of the world's first online home for AI storytellers, and it's a really, really fun experience. And it's really cool to see the different artists. We have people who are like yourself, who are just amazing rock star VFX artists, directors, people who are just killing it in the industry, all the way to people who have never created a creative project before. Yeah, it's super cool. And one guy's a janitor, and he's always dreamed of creating creative projects, and he's making really cool stuff in the course. We have a 10-year-old that's going through the program and pitched their animated Pixar style project. And so it's really cool to see kind of just these emerging indie voices come out of these AI tools. And I don't think a lot of these people would have been able to tell stories without these tools. And so that's it's been pretty cool to see that.
It's really funny. Last week, the owner of the studio that I work at, he mentioned we're looking for a new kind of, I forget the technical term, but essentially a janitor. And it's hey, I was interviewing this janitor today. It turns out he's a Houdini guy, and I had a look at his reel, and it's not actually that bad. And it's just really funny just to hear someone who you're hiring for one job is actually they're a really amazing artist in this whole other creative area. So it's you can't judge a book by its cover. There's always just so much untapped talent out there, and it's just more about enabling them. And usually something like this, artificial intelligence, a year back, 5 years even, that'd be okay, well, you got to be really smart to do all this stuff. And now it's just well, you got to install GitHub and a couple of things, and then you're pretty much off to the races. So for you, what was the learning curve to kind of get up to speed with everything and kind of get behind it all?
Yeah, I really feel for me, the learning curve was not super challenging, because a lot of these tools, to your point, are very consumer facing now. You don't have to have some sort of special computer or train the algorithm yourself. You can use ChatGPT like you would any other tool. Yeah. So for me, within about, I don't know, 5 hours of just playing around with each one of these tools, I was able to figure out some sort of creative application. Now, After Effects, which helps me to do, some of the more advanced movements, that took a lot longer to learn. But I mean, it's not inconceivable to feel there's going to be opportunity, especially with some of these newer tools that are coming out like Pika, for people to upload Midjourney images and just prompt in the movement that they want to see and get some really good stuff from there. So yeah, I wouldn't say it took very long. And I would say the average listener to your podcast would totally be capable of creating all of the AI projects that I've put together. It just takes a little bit of time to sit down and actually do it.
I love that, just because again, it's a totally new opportunity. I've been familiar with GPT for years, because we probably have I know Dean Graciosi and Russell Brunson and all those guys quite well, just from doing a lot of marketing stuff on the side and in another world. that was just something for me. Like, I'd been very familiar with GPT just because it was something that a couple of years ago, OpenAI was like, we may release this thing, but it then could be this huge factor for false information out there, as well as copywriters could just die overnight. Like, there's all these things, but it seemed like marketing and news reporting, things like that, journalism, those are the things that would be hit. And coincidentally, I got approached by NVIDIA and Google to be on a panel to discuss AI and explain what AI is to the layman. And that was the only time I've ever really pushed back in my life where I'm like, I'm not that guy. I'm like dumb as shit. I'm not, smart enough to explain this stuff. It actually forced me, after they're like, no, you'll be fine, it forced me to actually start to get into like, what is a GAN? Like, how's a neural network work? And start to learn the stuff. And that kind of got me on the radar. For me, though, it was just like, the more I looked into it, it was like, oh yeah, there's so much potential with where we're going, but it always seemed like the low-hanging fruit. Like, if we're talking like film, it would be like rotoscope and things like that, like camera tracking. Just those are the things that might go away, like the low technical thresholds. But like doing the creative stuff, as long as you have that core talent, you're good. And then nobody really anticipated. It's just like, hey, now it can just draw everything for you. It can make animated movies. It literally can do all the things that you would imagine would be the last things to go. And it's just phenomenal to see how much it's just changed how we do things. And I'm curious for you, like, what it's been like to kind of looking at that from a filmmaking perspective of like just what these tools can do already versus I'm more excited to see where they go. Whenever I see something, it's like, oh, that's kind of janky. It's like, it's not even give it 10 years. It's like, give it 10 weeks, not even 10 months, It's yeah, I'm kind of curious just to see what your take is on just watching all this kind of fester over such a short period of time.
I don't know if you agree, but for me, I feel like it's a full-time job just keeping up with all of these AI innovations.
Just really quickly, I do a executive call with the two owners of Action VFX, and like one of them, Luke Thompson, is just obsessed with this stuff, and like that's like one of my few outlets where I'm like, what tools do I need to learn this week? So yeah, I can't keep up. It's impossible.
That's so funny. Yeah, and I'm really good friends with the Action VFX guys. They're so awesome. I think like it's really interesting because like talking about timelines, like where we think things are going, like every single day there's some sort of new tool that promises to revolutionize some task in the production pipeline. I really honestly feel like what we're seeing right now is the worst version of all of these AI projects that's ever going to exist. And so, if we feel like they look a little uncanny or the characters don't quite look right, or maybe the camera movements look a little janky, they're only going to get better from here with updates. And those updates are happening at an incredible speed. I didn't feel like when we saw ChatGPT back in November that we would be at a level where it's really hard to tell the difference between ChatGPT written content by the computer and content written by a human. It's really insane. In terms of like the future, like what this means for film and television, 10 years from now, like if my kids are watching a show, like they'll more than likely be able to just kind of prompt and type in, I want to watch Batman fighting Superman and I want to be the main character, and they'll probably be able to watch something, and so it's really interesting. And I don't know personally what this means like beyond the next 2 years or so, but I really do imagine that we're going to start seeing the first AI assisted films, which I would imagine this fall we're going to start seeing a lot more press related to films that have embraced AI technology just in their production pipelines. We already have seen some of those, but just at a more expansive amount.
It depends on
and then
strike. He kind of has that put in the contract that it can't happen, but yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a whole new can of worms too. Yeah, but I've been telling people I really do think within a year or so, maybe even less, we'll see the first animated feature, and I already have a team that's working on that. And whether we're the first or not is less of my concern. I just really feel like these tools can be used to tell compelling stories, and to what extent is really anyone's guess. But I really do feel like more than ever, people's creative taste is going to be more important, so it's not just like your technical ability to do the task at hand. It's going to be your ability to draw the art from it. And you can see this, with like even the Houdini world that I've lived in for a while. There are technical people who are just amazing at the technical side of working inside of these softwares, but like from an artistic taste perspective. They may just be more challenged. And so I think that artistic taste is going to be just wildly important as these technologies progress.
The thing a bit about this, I actually had a beer with my neighbor. He's an exec at Autodesk. Strangest coincidence. When he came to my door, he's like, "Hi, I'm new to the neighborhood. I work for Autodesk." I'm like, "They give me paychecks every month." I see a lot of like where we're going, it being more about interactive experiences. So I thought about video games where it isn't like, "Hey, I played that game last night and I got to that level and that thing happened." It was, I went on this journey, and then like, your experience is going to be completely unique to you. It's just like, yeah, like, this whole thing happened and this happened and no one else has experienced that. Same thing with films. It's like, I feel like watching a movie about horror with this and this as a Wes Anderson take on it, whatever it might be. And suddenly you're experiencing that. And you're kind of doing that right now with the trailers that you're putting out, like creating a custom take on something that's already out. One thing I'll say, like NVIDIA put out a demo a few weeks ago where, just a video where it's showing like walking into a bar and the NPC that is at the bar, like you can actually have a real conversation with. And they had the Matrix City, the same thing. You just walk around and talk to people, not even type, and they're understanding and saying stuff back to you. Like that, to me, like everyone else seems to think is really janky. I'm like, holy shit, like this is the seeds of something really fucking amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I cannot wait for these AI assisted video games to start coming out. And I actually feel like we've seen a little bit of this concept with games like No Man's Sky, whenever it's just like procedurally generated, infinite universes and people loved exploring. It's going to be really cool to see what happens whenever that's directed in a very specific way, like what you're saying with just NPCs and generative environments, which we like saw some of the demos for at GDC. I totally agree with you. And I think these personalized experiences are going to be a big part of the next generation's relationship with consuming content. It's funny because I feel like for us, we grew up on watching tentpole content pieces that everyone talks about and is very it's the big thing in the press. We're going to watch the Barbie movie, we're going to go watch Oppenheimer. But going forward, I really do think it's going to come down to more of these niches, and whether it is a personalized experience like your TikTok feed and it's something that's just only for you, or just something that's hyper niche. And I really do feel like the studio model that we have right now, where it's one piece of content that's going to be applicable to 1 billion people, is probably not going to be as viable as some of these smaller studios that are able to create more niche content using AI that has the elevated quality for a select audience. I think is much more likely to be the future.
Last October, I was at Trojan Horse Was a Unicorn. It's a THU. It's a big event where speakers come to, and like we had like Mark Simonetti and all these other like really phenomenal artists all there. And this was right after like Midjourney and everything else started coming out and people going crazy. That was an interesting time because like Meets Meyer was there presenting, talking about AI, which again, like he was kind of saying like, here's this thing you probably haven't heard of yet, like check out all the stuff we're doing in this space. And there's a like Whisper came out that week, I remember as well. And like there's just like a lot of AI stuff just like starting to surface. And it was interesting because I was having conversations with a lot of very well-known artists who their work was the stuff that like now became the internet, where it's like, I want it in so-and-so style. Like they're the ones who are like, well, now my stuff is irrelevant because like it's everyone else's work is being shown instead of mine under my name. The thing is that like there were some people like Mark who he works with George R.R. Martin. He's a very, very well-known artist. He was all for it. He was on a few panels. He's like, yeah, I don't like my name being put on all this stuff because then everyone else's work shows up for it, but I'm all for it. This is an exciting platform and medium to be in. The main thing was there are a lot of people who are like, we need to stop this now, and like we need to get in front of this. And there is no stopping something like this, but it is interesting just to see like the two different camps of people. And I think this goes beyond AI. It's just some people kind of jump to fear while other people see opportunity. And I'm curious for you, what your thoughts are on like the doom and gloom, as we were talking about earlier, with people kind of seeing this as it's going to take our jobs and it's game over for us, rather than seeing it as you mentioned, like a 10-year-old being able to say, I'm going to go make a film and I have a whole virtual film crew in front of me who could just help me do what I need to do, rather than all these impeding things. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like the people who look at it negatively versus just realizing like, this is an insane opportunity that everyone's going to regret later not getting in front of.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I really do feel like it's more of an opportunity than something to be scared of. I was listening to a talk. There was an AI event out here in LA. I forgot the guy's name, but he's been in the VFX industry for 40 years at this point, and he was saying how, there's these times in technological innovation in which he's like doing the R&D and at the forefront of the technology, and essentially a job that he was doing gets completely replaced. And that's happened in his career like 3 times. But instead of, his job getting replaced and he goes and like sits on his hands and complains that like his job got replaced, he still stayed at the forefront of R&D and testing out the tools and the creative application. And so I would really say, like, to many artists who feel like, oh, this like art form is like taking my job or like removing some sort of creative part of me, I feel like these tools actually just elevate your creativity and multiply your creative output, whether it's through many more iterations or through just empowering you to find new mediums that you would have never been able to use in the past. And so if embraced, and especially if embraced like very soon, if you're one of the first artists in your niche, whatever that niche is, to embrace AI, I think you're going to see a lot more of the lion's share of the rewards, whether that's through like new opportunities or just like really cool creative projects that come your way. There's nothing you can do to stop these tools. Like they're going to be here forever. And so I think we need to learn how to embrace them and really kind of fall back on that early part of your career, when you're like learning the tool for the first time and, you're like, I don't know how this works. And it feels very technical. And you're like, oh no, will I ever become a VFX artist? Because this is so challenging, to learn. I think like we're all going through that collectively at the exact same time with these AI tools. But I think at the same time, there's that sense of like wonder and excitement about, learning a new tool and finding new creative possibilities that I personally find very interesting and fun. And I would encourage anyone listening to this podcast just to go out and start messing around with the tools, like rather than just reading articles about how they're scary.
So true. And it's just exciting. Again, it's impossible to anticipate where it's heading because it's just happening so quickly. It isn't like anything else that's really out there on the planet where it's like, oh, like iPhone 1 comes out, it's like, I can't wait for iPhone 3, like it'll be smoother, it'll be easier, it'll be this. It's like, you can't, like, who knows where we're going to be a year from now or 2 years from now. It's an exciting time in that respect for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. Have you seen AI being used in the productions that you're working on?
I've talked, like I had Lon, one of the founder of Martians, Aliens, Robots, Zombies, Mars, over in Toronto. He and a few other studios are starting to use a lot of neural networks for automating a lot of like their beauty work or rotoscoping and things like that. So like my whole take is that it's going to take a few years for visual effects to catch up. So there's a lot of applications coming out, and like right now with the actor strike and with the writer strike, that's something that my studio we're about to definitely start to lean into AI. It's like, hey, like we're gonna have a bit of off time. Well, rather than like sitting on our hands, like let's use this as a chance to really up our game, like revise our pipeline, a lot of things. But AI is definitely an area that I want us to start looking at it for compositing as well as for tool development. There's a lot of things. I do think that a lot of the studios were becoming very self-aware of like the different tools and the capabilities coming out, but I think there'll be a bit of a catch-up period before a lot of things really start to affect everything we're doing, and it will, of course, but I'd say it's probably like 2 or 3 years for the ship to kind of steer in that direction. So seeing people use it, I know that a lot of directors, they're working with concept artists who are able to knock out 5 to 10 iterations of a concept piece in a day rather than taking a week to do one. So things like that, it allows or enables artists to get ideas out quicker rather than it being like, well, the computer took my job. It's like now I can iterate quicker and get more ideas out. It's just really funny. I'm training up my producer at the moment for the podcast on making thumbnails, and I was recording a video and like, here's how to build a thumbnail, and I ended up just like Googling some Midjourney images. I'm like, hey, well, these are just really captivating images, and as I'm looking at them, I'm just like, I still can't believe that this is AI generated. It's just, so I'm still in awe every day of just like, this is phenomenal, and they just keep getting better and better. So yeah, so I think we will use it a lot more, but I think that it's going to take a while for it to become a mainstream thing versus, I'm not going to say a hobby, but it's definitely an obsession is probably a better word for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you ever are having trouble figuring out if an image is Midjourney or not, just count the fingers, and it usually just gives it away.
I was curious too, like for you, more from an observer point of view, like what are some of the tools or some of the areas that you're really getting excited about? Again, because there's so much, I'm always just curious, like what's in your tool bag right now? Like what are the bookmarks that you have in your Chrome? So yeah, like what things are you getting excited about or have seen you're like, holy crap, I've been using this is amazing?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously ChatGPT, Midjourney, I feel like those two tools have really revolutionized many industries, and the work, like you were saying with Midjourney, is just astounding every time I see a piece of content come out of it. But there have been some innovations recently that are really interesting. There's a tool called Pika. I don't know if you've had a chance to mess around with that one yet.
I've bookmarked it a few hundred times, but I haven't had a chance to check it out yet.
It's really interesting. So obviously, like Runway and Runway Gen 2 that came out, it's just straight up prompt to generative video. Pika is very interesting because it accepts images and can use reference data, but it does a much better job than Runway at actually animating the actual movement inside of the software. And so it's really interesting when you pair that with an AI video like upresing tool like Topaz Video, and then like throw in some like frame interpolation, and it's almost like you can get 4K footage that looks pretty darn good. Not great, but pretty darn good, just from an AI tool, which is really exciting. I think like those are the two biggest tools that I'm super interested in learning more about, because up to this point we've had, I would say, like you're taking a Midjourney image or like a facial movement from a tool like DID and having to do a lot of comp work, but those tools allow anybody to literally just prompt to watch entertainment, and I really do feel like that will be the future. Mm-hmm. So it kind of feels like you're messing around with like the entertainment style of the future when you're inside these tools, which is really funny. But they almost all use like Discord to run, which is so funny. It's just it's weird to me. And even Midjourney, it uses Discord. Like these tools that like are changing society have such a I don't want to use the word janky, but it kind of is like a very rude bot. yeah, exactly. It feels like somebody like in a Discord server just came out with like an interesting plugin or something, and it's like changing the world, so it's really funny.
I'm definitely more obsessed with the tools that I can get offline, so Stable Diffusion, and I've had a few of the Stable Diffusion guys on before, but like just anything that I can automate and write code for, just that to me always appeals to me, because I think it's just a pipeline person to me where I'm like, I want this to be scalable, so if I can automate this, I can plug it in this and this. And so Stable Diffusion, a lot of tools where it's like if I can actually talk to it, or if it has an API, GPT is a good example of that, then I get obsessed about that, whereas something I've actually got to go into Discord, it's to me is non-scalable, because I can't then say, okay, make 1 million images. I gotta give it a prompt each time. So I do love the ability, like Whisper and a lot of the other tools, that being able to download them, it's like, okay, cool, now all the audio transcriptions from the past few years, which I'll never have time to listen to, I can then, and this is what I did at Christmas. I had a flight to Australia. We got snowed in at the airport, so couldn't actually make it all the way across. And so ended up back in Portland and ended up just spending 3 weeks writing code for AI. And so it gets to a point where it's like, okay, I can get an audio recording, I can have it transcribe like hundreds of hours of stuff, and then cipher it through GPT, and then turn that into summaries and do stuff with that. It's just like you can kind of daisy chain all this tech together into a bigger kind of mind. So it's just amazing to kind of see like that kind of access.
Yeah, and I think people like yourself who have the technical capabilities to connect these tools together are going to be the ones that really end up pushing the artistry forward. Right now, like for example, whenever I put together a project like one of these like concept trailers, there's 19 specific steps like to go from like idea all the way to like execution. But I feel like what's going to happen is these steps in the pipeline are going to get automated between themselves. Like pretty soon I'll be able to just go from like ChatGPT, like you're saying, and it automatically links with an API over to Midjourney to produce the artwork, and then that gets scrubbed, I don't know, into like a Premiere timeline or directly into 11 Labs to give me the voice. And so like all of these tools, like you can definitely see the potential, and it's not a matter of when, it's really just if those kind of barriers get knocked down.
You've got a marketing background. It's kind of like as Zapier, it's just like, okay, great. I just have webhooks, plug into webhooks, and suddenly someone goes to the landing page, goes through a funnel, and buys something, and then it fires out a webhook, and they got access to XYZ, and it emails them, and all you're doing is just getting technology to talk to other technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was kind of curious for you, like, what are some of the unexpected surprises you've seen with AI? Is there anything that you're just like, I didn't see that coming, or just like, holy crap, this is amazing? Again, very similar question, but I'm just kind of curious for you, like, what are some of the just mind-blowing things that you're like, fuck, this just kind of caught me off guard?
I think it's one of the more interesting things. I guess this isn't like a technical AI thing that has happened, but it's been more people's response to AI out here in Hollywood. We launched some of these trailers, and it was incredible to see how quickly bigwigs in the industry were like, how soon can we create a project with AI, which, I think speaks a lot to a lot of the strikes and things that are going on at the moment. But it's been very interesting to see the desire to use AI in just a filmmaking context, because I think up until I started messing around with these tools, I wouldn't have thought that people would have been immediately like, oh, you want to do an AI project? Like, here's a budget, like make a film, go. I would have figured like it would have gone through a traditional like pipeline, like pitching and like just a typical like filmmaking experience. So I think that's been really interesting. Every single day I like log in, and there's like new tools that like do various things, from like watching YouTube videos, taking the transcript, giving me like quick action points, all the way to like tools that like automatically create like spreadsheet formulas and just like silly things that like help to automate like some of my business work. And so I think like generally like there's really no part of your like productivity pipeline that can't be affected by AI, as long as you just kind of like stay on top of the trends and things like that. And my hope really is for Curious Refuge to be a place that filmmakers, VFX artists can go to see kind of what's the latest news that I need to know, because there's so much to sift through. There's just like so many articles, so many, whether it's doom and gloom articles or just product releases. It's really hard to tell like what should I actually be paying attention to, what's kind of fluff. And so it is helpful to kind of find a few of those like websites that are helping to contextualize and make these tools a little more accessible.
How do you keep on top of everything? Because again, it's just overwhelmed. And at the same time, like, what are the go-to resources that you'd recommend for people just to, whether it's you or whether it's other YouTube channels, how do you keep your finger on the pulse, and like what are some good resources to keep an eye on?
Again, I would say if you can, just subscribing to the Curious Refuge newsletter. We send out a weekly newsletter that just has a list of like AI news you need to know. And so it's just like everything from the last week that hopefully creates a bit of a context of the fun tools to use, some like cool projects that have come out and things like that. There's also like a few other websites. Futurepedia is a great one I subscribe to. They send out a newsletter, I think it's every week, that just has like a list of like interesting AI tools. And there's a guy that does a YouTube channel. His name's Matt Wolf. He like really goes into, have you seen his stuff?
Yeah, Fridays is always good. Like I Uber home every Friday, so it's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna watch his weekly updates. So there's a couple of people like that, and Matt Wolf's like definitely one at the forefront I love paying attention to.
Yeah, he does a really good job. And he like, if there's like a cool AI project that comes out, whether it's Balenciaga or even like the videos that we put together, like he'll like show you pretty quickly like how to like take tools and like put them together to like make one yourself. And I find that to be like really helpful. Yeah, I would say like those resources are the ones that like I stay up with or take a look at regularly, and then just setting up filters and Google News and things like that.
I was on your YouTube channel right before our call, and I noticed you had like a video on, I guess like 8 months ago, it was like a Notion template, which I've always been a huge advocate for Notion. I was begging and pleading to get access to their AI API when that first got announced, and then I didn't do anything with it at all. I was curious for you. In fact, I'm kind of scared. It's like a few times it's writing, and I'm like, stop writing, like you're ruining my document. But I was curious, have you looked into that at all, and just what your take is on some of the use cases of how you can use AI in let's say document writing, email, things like that?
I've used Notion's AI. It's really helpful for like doing many different things. I don't find it to be quite as advanced as using like ChatGPT. So like, for example, if I'm working on a script or like an email draft for like marketing or something like that like feels very important, I typically won't use Notion. But Notion's really helpful because it has a lot of features like that can do summaries and things like that. So I do a lot of like my business meetings, like I'll take notes inside of Notion, or, you know, take a document like a transcript from a podcast or something like that, drop it in Notion, and Notion can just do like quick summaries, which is super, super helpful. And then it's all organized in like the traditional Notion database. So I would definitely say if you haven't used Notion and you're listening to this podcast, definitely go check out Notion. Like I really feel like my life is in two parts. It's like pre-Notion and then post-Notion. And I feel like my brain just no longer, like all of the like swirling disorganization isn't there anymore. And I just like throw it all in Notion, have these systems for keeping track of everything. And yeah, I do like the AI there, and the functionality is like increasing all the time. And it really is in depth and as complicated as you want to make it.
Yeah, obviously there's a big craze about building your second brain, which to me, yeah, I mean, there's so many things you can do with it, and just kind of it's note-taking on steroids in a lot of ways, which is super helpful. Obviously, whether it's with Rebel Way or whether it's with your YouTube channel, your newsletter, obviously, you know, you found it important to be able to give back to the community a lot. And I was kind of curious, like, what your take is on that. Like, how important is it for you to be able to contribute back to everyone else and help other people who are interested in, you know, up and coming in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I've found it wildly important for me to give back, because I really wouldn't have had the opportunities that I had without people creating content online and sharing tutorials, their processes, or just like generally inspiring me through their work. And so I've really kind of made it my entire career to give back to folks. And it really comes around whenever you help other people, like rather than me just like taking like my secrets or the things that I've learned and hoarding them for myself. I love the opportunities that pop up whenever you share what you have done and your process. And I find that it just creates like a better community and a better environment. And so I would really, I guess, encourage everyone on this podcast, like maybe dip your toes into like sharing your process. It doesn't have to be like some sort of like in-depth tutorial or anything like that, but even just a breakdown of, you know, how you put together like cool projects that people have found interesting. It goes a long way, and it's super, super rewarding. And for me personally, I feel like almost indebted to people. Like for me, it was like, you know, I was learning these tools in like, I guess around like 2008 or so is kind of when I started. And so, you know, Andrew Kramer and like Video Copilot was like a huge part. Yeah, like totally wouldn't be here without him. And so I think it's just, there's been like these people over time that have totally helped me in the process. And I find it super rewarding to be an artist that kind of is a little more in the education side of things.
Yeah, I think it's so important. You're right. Like there's always that scarcity mindset. They're probably the same people who are the doom and gloom, like, you know, we're all, the world's going to end, versus, you know, there's so many times that like I've, you know, put out some stuff like, hey, I figured out this thing that's really hard. I spent weeks on that. Here it is. And here's how I did it. And then someone else, like whether it's weeks or months later, comes back like, hey, I took that and I did all this. And now like, you know, check out how this works. And then I'm, you know, everyone starts piggybacking on each other, and it means that you build this community of people who are all helping each other, and that idea grows into something bigger, rather than it being like, no, I'm going to keep it to myself, and because of that, it just kind of stays stagnant, you know, rather than being something that like everyone is kind of pushing and pulling around. So I mean, it's such a healthy mindset, but it's also just a fun one to see how ideas kind of mutate into bigger, cooler concepts.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's really interesting how I feel like as artists, unfortunately, like sometimes falling into that scarcity, it can be our like initial reaction, like, oh, like I created something, people like it, I need to like hold those secrets in for myself, or like, you know, shield my process. But I really have found that like whenever you kind of open the book and like share everything, people tend to want more from you, whether that's like just there being more of a demand for you to be hired as an artist, or just generally to work with you or help, you know, grow some sort of following online. That could have other helpful ramifications, further down the road. So I definitely feel like giving back is just like, it's just fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess a couple of quick questions, but obviously you put out a lot of trailers at this point, and I'm kind of curious, like for you, what has been one of your favorite, and just what's the process been like for you in terms of what ones excited you, or was there one in particular that you're like, hey, this is gonna be really cool to tackle?
Yeah, we actually just today launched a new trailer. So it's the Wednesday before Barbie and Oppenheimer come out, and so we put together a Barbenheimer trailer that uses.
I found out about that 2 days ago, that's a thing, like Barbenheimer.
I thought I was so original last week, sitting on my patio and be like, there should be Barbenheimer, and then I go online and like, apparently this has been the biggest thing
the actors have been talking about, which I thought was hilarious.
So funny. So we put together that trailer very quickly, and I love it. I just think it's like really funny, and it seems like the community is really liking it, and so it's really cool to like have these like just fun ideas. Like, we obviously don't feel like that project's gonna do anything, like it's just a fun creative project that's interesting to get out there, but it's really, I think, like a cool example of the types of almost like community driven prompts that are going to be very popular as we like move into this new era of the way that we like consume content. And I'm also working on a short film right now for the All In conference, which I'm super excited about. It's just a conference that happens out here in LA, and it just has a lot of like tech people and things like that. And it's so funny because, again, if you think about the context of like this AI story with me, I started with this on my laptop as like a fun little side project, just messing around with some tools. And then they asked me to be a part of this conference. And I was talking to the guy the other day. It's so ridiculous. He's like, okay, so we're going to have a few speakers on your day. I want you to speak. So we'll have like the guy that invented AI mathematics, which is like crazy. And he's like, and then you'll get up. Okay. And then we'll have the CEO of Salesforce, and then Elon Musk. How does that sound? And I'm like, what the heck, man? Like, of course I would love to do this, but it's so funny how I think just like embracing these tools and like being someone who I think can creatively contextualize what this means like for the future, for my niche, which just so happens to be filmmaking and storytelling, has unlocked like some interesting opportunities. So it's like, I don't say all these things to be like, oh, like look at these cool things that's happening in my life. I just really think everyone listening to this podcast, like if you start creatively contextualizing these tools, there's some really cool stuff that potentially could open up to you.
Being passionate about things opposed to, doing it is because I think, again, like it's something that kind of drives you to go down these rabbit holes. At the same time, it's a fun chance to explore without intent. It's not like, well, I gotta make some money, so I'm gonna go do XYZ, or I gotta do this because it'll probably go viral. And again, like I think that's such a big trap that a lot of people do, of seeing people like, I'll say this, like there was someone I had on a podcast years ago that posted a video on Instagram, and it went viral, and instantly they went up to like 800k followers from 10k or whatever. And it was one of those things, like it was fun to chat about. Then I realized like that was their thing. Like every single video they make was, today I'm going to go viral, today I'm going to go viral. And that is going to suck every day that you're not getting that thing. But if you're just going and playing and being a kid, it's just like, I'm going to get my hands dirty and have fun. And then the byproduct is that something fun and great happens from it. Awesome. But it just means that you're more focused on the journey rather than like there being this huge payoff at the destination.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really like tried to like not be married to outcomes and really just try to like be just committed to the process. It was really helpful. My wife, like back in late April, I was like, feeling a little tired. I'd been like worked on a few projects. I was like, just kind of feeling a little burnt out. Like I feel like I need a win. And she's like, just do something fun. I don't want you to like try to like do anything that has like a big result or anything like that. I just want you to like, do something for like creative Caleb. And so that's like what actually inspired me to like put together the Wes Anderson thing and like kicked off this whole thing. So I couldn't agree with you more. I just think it's like, let's have fun. Like we don't have like, everything doesn't have to be monetized. It doesn't have to like have this master plan that's like getting us to like some sort of crazy end goal. Like, what if we just got excited about stuff and shared it out? Like there's a good chance that if it excites you and you're super passionate about it, like other people are probably going to think it's pretty cool too. And if not, so be it.
Yeah. And again, you're just focused on the journey, and that's what matters. No, I love this, Caleb. And I'm curious, like for everyone listening, where can they go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can check out my website, curiousrefuge.com. We have an online boot camp that we teach artists how to use the latest AI tools to put together AI films. And so by the end of the 1 month boot camp, you'll essentially be able to create an AI short film. You'll be able to pitch your ideas and, just have a set of really cool tools under your tool belt. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in this emerging technology to come check us out.
I love that. Awesome, Caleb. It's been great to chat. So again, I appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.